out of what you would call the monarchy of the nation of Israel. That would include Judah. And when we get to that, which would be, then you'll be in what's called the Babylon captivity. When we get to that, we could make a break and do something else for a while. What? Well, one thing we could be doing is The Chosen, looking at it a little bit and working through it. That's one thing that's been going on Sunday nights. I would have to say to you, the way I think you have to do The Chosen is pretty much the way we're doing it, which is you watch an episode and then you have a discussion. That makes for a kind of a lengthy meeting at times, because from my point of view, this is just me speaking, I like the discussions better than I like the program. I mean, the program's good, it's interesting, it's like any dramatic thing that you look at. But anyway, that being said, I think those meetings you would have to say, I need, and then I would say something like an hour and 15 minutes to do that, to do justice to it. So that's a possibility. We could go do something. If you wanted to jump out of it now, we could jump out of it now and go do something about Christmas if you want to. What are your thoughts? Does anybody have any suggestions, or am I just up here not really needing to be concerned? We can just motor on and go through the Bible and everything's clear sailing. Let's do it.
I'm kind of curious how far you guys are into The Chosen.
The Chosen, we are at episode 9. We're ready for episode 9, which would be the beginning of the second season. So, and of course, I think knowing the people that have looked at The Chosen so far, if there's enough interest here and we really would like to do that, I think we'd be very happy starting over if you wanted to. But there has to be, I have to hear enough, I'd be here for that and not very much, I'll drop out and I don't want to watch The Chosen because I don't want to lose people because we've taken that aside. But anyway, those are thoughts. We don't have to decide tonight. We have more time. I do want to say on schedule one more thing before I forget it. Next week we will not be here. I am going to be in Osceola for my family's gathering for Thanksgiving, and I have to pick up my son David at the Kansas City Airport in the afternoon on Wednesday. So rather than come all the way back down here, I'll go to Osceola, stay overnight, that type of thing. So that's the way that's the route that's going. Also, of course, this Sunday, I want you to remember this Sunday night, we have a meeting with our community over here at First Baptist, so at 6 o'clock. Okay, any questions, any thoughts, suggestions?
What would the Christmas thing be about?
The Christmas thing, if we took off and did Christmas,
Yeah.
I would think, I actually would be interested in doing Matthew, the story of Christmas in the book of Matthew. And that would include the visit of the wise men. It would include we don't talk about this very much, but would include the death of the infants around the environments of Bethlehem after Jesus and Joseph and Mary are warned to leave, and the Magi or the wise men go different ways, that type of thing, and then probably we'd finish up right there with that. We could do if we have time, we could go over and do the shepherds as well.
That'd probably be a good idea since it's close to Christmas.
But we'll be covering that. In any case, we'll be covering that on Sundays too. I mean, that's Sunday morning. Because after Thanksgiving, then my first sermon is going to be on Christmas type stuff, and it will stay right there on Christmas until we get to Christmas Day. Let me say a word right there. We're talking a lot about other stuff. I want to get your minds running about your schedule too. encourage you to think about being here on Christmas Day. It's Sunday this year, so I would love to have a decent turnout in spite of Christmas Day being on Sunday. So see if you can get your heart set in that direction. Okay, let's talk about what we have in front of us tonight. We're going to start out in 2 Chronicles tonight. After a bit, we're going to shift back to 2 Kings. And I will tell you that the story we're going to get into tonight is also found in Isaiah 36 and following. Each one of these tells a little bit different angle, a little bit different detail about the stories that we're on right now. And I'm going to bounce back and forth between 2 Chronicles and 2 Kings because we're just going to flesh the story out. Whichever account has the best information, that's what we're on the particular period of the story we're in, that's what we're going to follow. So 2 Chronicles 31. Now when all this was finished, what was finished? You remember from last week? We were in 2 Chronicles last week also, so you could just go back to the previous chapter and 29 also, and you will find the story of how when Hezekiah became king, he started making changes. I mean, a lot of them. One of the first things they did is they had a big celebration there in town. They had in Jerusalem. They cleaned up the temple. They made a big pile of stuff that had to be dragged out of the temple. They threw it over into the valley Kidron. They went ahead and had a great sacrifice. Then they decided to do Passover in the second month, and it was actually just a little off from when you normally do Passover. They wanted to get it in that year. They sent people up into Israel, the northern kingdom, northern tribes, and asked people to come down for Passover. They got laughed out of town in most places, but some people did come down from Israel. Quite a few. And so they had one of the greatest, grandest Passovers ever. And had so much delight and so much fellowship and fun in the Lord that rather than finish up in 1 week, which is your normal pattern for Passover, they said, hey, we're doing this 2 weeks. We're just going to stay and do another week. So for 2 weeks, they celebrated in Jerusalem and had a wonderful time. Now when all this was finished, there you go. That's everything that I just told you happened. When all that finished, all Israel who were present went out to the cities of Judah, broke the pillars in pieces, cut down the Asherim, and pulled down the high places and the altars throughout all Judah and Benjamin, as well as in Ephraim and Manasseh, until they had destroyed them all. So you may remember this is one of the things that the kings had always failed to do, was to take down the high places and anything that wasn't in Jerusalem. If they were reforming things and making them better, all they would do is kind of hit Jerusalem and a few high places outside. Well, they went all the way up, even though Judah really didn't have any control of this area up here. The Assyrians had come in here and largely conquered it all and taken people out, some of them. So there was kind of a remaining people who were here, along with lots of foreigners from other places at this point. And so they go up here into Ephraim and they pull out all these idol-worshiping places here in Benjamin right here, Ephraim and Manasseh. So they went a long way from down here, got clear up in here, not all the way to the Sea of Galilee, but partially on the path up that way. So they did a lot of cleaning up of attitudes and worship habits that had always been left alone. They just always said, okay, no, don't worry about the high places. We're just going to keep worshiping here in Jerusalem. Then all the sons of Israel returned to their cities, each to his possession. So after they did this, your writer is pointing out, and I tried to draw some red arrows. I should have used green. I see that now. We should have better. But they went on back home, is the idea. come down from Israel, and that sort of the party was over, as it were. However, Hezekiah wasn't done. Verse 2, Hezekiah appointed the divisions of the priests and the Levites by their divisions, each according to his service, both the priests and the Levites for burnt offerings and for peace offerings, to minister to and to give thanks and to praise in the gates of the camp of the Lord. I find that fascinating that this is something that he did, that he took care of the spirit, you might say, of the entire town. Because you have a situation here where what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to have, music, some sound of praise of God going on in town. And so he takes care of that and returns things to the way that they should have been. And maybe it helps us, too, to realize that Jerusalem would have been a cool place to visit. Because, as you come into town, you would hear the praise of God going on. He also appointed the king's portion of his goods for the burnt offerings, namely for the morning and evening burnt offerings, and the burnt offerings for the Sabbaths, and for the new moons, and for the fixed festivals, as it was written in the law of the Lord. So he knew that he was supposed to be making a sacrifice as king, as the leader of Israel, and so he made sure that that was all appointed and gotten together the way it was supposed to be. He just followed the book, used the Old Testament law to inform him as he did that. He also commanded the people who lived in Jerusalem to give the portion due to the priests and the Levites, that they might devote themselves to the law of God. What was the reason given for getting the portions to the priests and the Levites? Let's go back and look at that. You examine this verse and tell me why were they getting the portions to the priests and the Levites? Commanded the people who lived in Jerusalem to give the portion due to the priests and the Levites, that they might devote themselves to the law of the Lord. What was going on? Cheers, Anthony.
Maybe to entice them?
To what?
Maybe to entice them?
Not to entice them quite, but I think you're working on some stuff there in your brain that's starting to get us close. So that the Levites might do what? What's the end of the verse say?
Devote themselves.
Devote themselves to the law of the Lord. What were the Levites supposed to be doing? Any ideas? Their job in the scheme of the law is to take care of the temple. That's what they do. And you might say, well, there wasn't anything to do. Maybe you just dusted it, or no, you wouldn't have a lot to do. You had to manage livestock for one thing, because you're always moving livestock in to butcher, and of course when you butcher, there's a lot of material that results from it, whether it's blood or what you might call offal, that you had to deal with. There would be things like that. If somebody had a question about the law, the Levites are their first line of teaching and counsel. They should be taking care of that. They should be instructing people. So the Levites had a lot to do, and all of it, pretty much the way I understand this thing, is that all of it had fallen into complete disrepair. The priests and the Levites both. The priests are supposed to handle the sacrifices themselves, but they had both been completely set aside so far as what they were doing by the previous king, by Ahaz, because he was worshiping idols. These men were devoted to the law of God. And so now they needed to do this, and the way that God had arranged it in the past was, look, I'm going to put the Levites and the priests in charge of temple things and of teaching people out in the country. That's what they had to do. But they're going to get supported by that. They will have both their own pasture and garden areas around way support the Levites and priests and make sure that they're able to have a life. That if a Levite or a priest is busy all day trying to herd cattle or raise a farm or take care of a trade, he can't really be doing what he's called by God to do for the temple and for the people. So this is what's behind this verse. As soon as the order spread, that is, as soon as he commanded these people, look, you got to start bringing in support for these people, the way the law told you. So it says, as soon as the order spread, the sons of Israel provided in abundance the first fruits of grain, new wine, oil, honey, and all of the produce, and of all the produce of the field, and they brought in abundantly the tithe of all. What is a tithe? 1/10. So they were to take the first 10th from everything that they produced as kind of an agricultural community. They were each one to take his 10th and bring it into the temple. Do you think God's people were unhappy with this arrangement? By this verse, if you read this verse, as soon as the order spread, the sons of Israel provided in abundance the first fruits of grain. Were they unhappy or happy, do you think?
Happy, because they had too much of it.
Yeah, they must have been happy. They must have been excited to do this. Why do you think they might have been? Do you think they had a good time at Passover? I think they did. I think they were having a revival. I think they were excited about getting back to God and doing things His way. And so I think that's why they had such a good turnout. Would this be a good guide regarding giving habits? For us today, let's say, is a tithe a good way of thinking about giving?
It's a starting point.
It's a starting point. I like that guy. So it's a way to begin to think about your giving habit. Well, how much am I supposed to give? Well, God's pattern in the past has been a 10th. So think about that. Is that something that you think God would want you to do? Paul puts it that each man is to give according to as God has prospered him, and that he is to give. He says it shows that he is thinking in percentage terms. So you set aside some portion of what you earn and bring it into the Lord's house somewhat. Now, we can go on and on about giving and where you can give and that kind of things, but that's enough for what we're looking at tonight. The sons of Israel and Judah, who lived in the cities of Judah, also brought in the tithe of oxen and sheep and the tithe of sacred gifts, which were consecrated to the Lord their God, and placed them in heaps. Wow! In the 3rd month, they began to make the heaps and finished them by the 7th month. So everybody, I think what happened was they hadn't been used to doing this. And so they got used to doing it and in a hurry. And I think some of them said, you know what, I'm really kind of past due in this, and I'm going to make up some way. I'm going to give a lot. And so they brought in a lot. And I think that's partly what went on. When Hezekiah and the rulers came and saw the heaps, they blessed the Lord and His people Israel. They said, wow, what a gift. What our people are really giving. Praise God. Then Hezekiah questioned the priests and the Levites concerning the heaps. Azariah, the chief priest of the house of Zadok, said to him, since the contributions began to be brought into the house of the Lord, we have had enough to eat with plenty left over. For the Lord has blessed His people, and this great quantity is left over. Why do you think there may have been a surplus? Besides what I said, might there be other reasons? Probably some of them are hard to think of, I suppose. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe people were excited. Maybe they were happy, joyful. I don't know. Those are easy answers. But I think there's another thing that possibly has gone on So I think they didn't use up everything that had been brought in by the people, and that may have been part of the reason. Then Hezekiah commanded them to prepare rooms in the house of the Lord, and they prepared them. What he's saying is, look, we have all this extra stuff, we've got to have a place to store it, we can't just heap it up out here in the courtyard. That is apparently what they had done, they just heaped it up, and if you remember, the temple of the Lord, it's a big, kind of long house, but then it's got a great big courtyard all around it, wide open space. And I imagine what they did was they just piled it up in heaps in that courtyard. It says they faithfully brought in the contributions and the tithes and the consecrated things, and Conaniah the Levite was officer in charge of them, and his brother Shimei was second, Jehiel, Azaziah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah were overseers under the authority of Conaniah and Shimei his brother by the appointment of King Hezekiah. So Hezekiah appointed these two guys, and then they had folk underneath them that had to look after and make sure they knew what had been brought in and kind of account for it. Azariah was the chief officer of the house of God. So generally, Azariah took care of the temple things, and he would have been involved in this as well. Korah, the son of Imnah, the Levite, the keeper of the eastern gate, was over the freewill offerings of God to apportion the contributions for the Lord in the most holy things. Under his authority were Ed and Miniamin, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah in the cities of the priests. Remember I said there were cities for the priests, to distribute faithfully their portions to their brothers by divisions, whether great or small, without regard to their genealogical enrollment, to the males from 30 years old and upward, everyone who entered the house of the Lord for his daily obligations, for their work and their duties according to their divisions, as well as the priests who were enrolled genealogically according to their fathers' households, and the Levites from 20 years old and upwards by their duties and their divisions. The genealogical enrollment included all their little children, their wives, their sons, and their daughters from the whole assembly, where they consecrated themselves faithfully in holiness. They got busy and took care of one another the way the Old Testament law said they should do, and they were very careful to see to it that everybody got what they were supposed to. All the sons of Aaron, the priests who were in the pasture lands of their cities, or in each and every city, there were men who were designated by name to distribute portions to every male among the priests, and that everyone genealogically enrolled among the Levites. So if you're a Levite, we haven't taken, it's almost like we haven't taken care of you in the past, but we're changing the way we're doing business. We're going to make sure you get what you're supposed to have so you can be released to do the things that you're supposed to do. I don't think that doesn't sound like they missed anyone. I don't think they did. As Hezekiah did throughout all Judah, and he did what was good, right, and true before the Lord his God. Every work which he began in the service of the house of God, in law and in commandment, seeking God, his God, he did with all his heart, and prospered. Now we come to trouble. Because, and I love Hezekiah. I love what he has done here. Hezekiah has become to me, in a certain sense, nearly my favorite king, because he came so far back from so far down and did so much good. And I appreciate what he accomplished in his life. 2 Chronicles 32, after these acts of faithfulness, Sennacherib, do you want to remember that name? Sennacherib? Can you say Sennacherib?
Sennacherib.
Sennacherib. It's like, McDonald's has a McRib sandwich. Yeah? So when you want to remember this guy that was a foe of Hezekiah, you just remember that he liked to eat ribs. So it was Sennacherib. Okay, when you're a Bible college student and you've got to remember things for exams, you'll come up with the stupidest things, and that's what I came up with. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah and besieged the fortified cities and thought to break into them for himself. So You may remember, I'm gonna scoot all the way back up there. I forgot to put this in that part of the, well, I didn't really get a chance to. I kind of ran out of time when I prepared. Sennacherib, his headquarters are back up in here. And he's sending people down here to make trouble for Judah. Judah's way, way down here. It's a little tiny yellow spot. Eventually, the Assyrian kingdom covers all this area up here. And really, they were dominant up in these other areas as well. They were very large, very powerful. And so Sennacherib is this great king of that whole region, and he's come down to make trouble for the people of Judah. Went too far. Thus Hezekiah did throughout all Judah, and did what was good right through everyone. Okay, here we are. After the acts of faithfulness, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and invaded Judah and besieged the fortified cities and thought to break into them himself. So I don't know that he necessarily came down himself, but he sent his army down there to take care of business. Now, when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come and that he intended to make war on Jerusalem, he decided with his officers and his warriors to cut off the supply of water from the springs which were outside the city, and they helped him. So many people assembled and stopped up all the springs and the stream which flowed through the region, saying, "Why should the kings of Assyria come and find abundant water?" I think that's a really kind of a neat idea to come up with this. To say, you know what, these old boys coming down from the north, they're going to have a lot of trouble hanging in here around our town if they don't have anything to drink. Let's rob them of their water. So let's stop up all the springs and all the creeks that are around here, and we just keep them from having anything to drink. Now this is, I got a little ahead of myself here, and I'm going to have to come back to it. This is actually a tunnel that was dug by Hezekiah in the city. It says he took courage and rebuilt all the wall that had been broken down, and he erected towers on it and built another outside wall, and strengthened the millow in the city of David and made weapons and shields in great number. You may remember that I've talked about the millow sometimes. Up here is where your temple is. As you got down to this part of the town, the topography of the land dropped off. There's kind of a dropping off area right here. And I think what the millow was, it's not really well understood yet, but my thought is that it's a secondary fortification perhaps, but certainly like a retaining wall in this area that holds the earth up, and they can build on it and put more buildings safely and easily in town. And I think they used it as a fortification as well, because this comes up a lot in connection with military events. So that's partly what I think that millow is. You look it up yourself, it's not a real well understood thing to this day. He appointed military officers over the people and gathered them to him in the square of the city gate, and spoke encouragingly to them, saying, so maybe that's a good place to stop and point out now what he has done. He said, look, I'm going to have people who are over the people that come in. I have to have officers over these people. So I'm going to appoint you and you and you, and you've got to take care of this family and that family and so forth throughout the empire, or whatever. It's not really an empire, but this kingdom. And your job is to make sure they're organized and ready to work militarily if necessary. And by the way, we're going to have a meeting up here at the gate. So everybody came up to the gate, and he encouraged them. He said, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be dismayed because of the king of Assyria, nor because of all the horde that is with him. For the one with us is greater than the one with him. That's a good thing for us to remember. When everything is assailed against us, and it doesn't look like we're going to manage wants to help you. And he is on your side to help you to get through the time. So remember that God is with you. With him is, now Hezekiah continues to speak. He says, with him, that is with Sennacherib, is only an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. And the people relied on the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. Do you think the Israelites were excited and proud of what had happened in Jerusalem and in the outlying area in the years since Hezekiah became king? What do you think? We've studied about this now. They had a great big sacrifice to begin with. They had Passover. Then Hezekiah has been consistently, after getting everything to be organized after the law was supposed to, the people have responded so well when they've got reorganized that now the temple people have too much. They have to they have to find places to put the overage, the surplus that's come to them. So what do you think? Do you think the Israelites were happy about the way things were going? I think generally they were. They were excited to be an Israelite again. And so when King Hezekiah brings them up to talk to them, they're really interested in listening. They want to do what he says. And you will be able to see this as we go on in this story. If we get far enough tonight, I decided we'll just go, not try to hurry, but we'll just go and then we'll stop at 7 o'clock because we're not going to get through all of it yet tonight on Hezekiah, I'm sure. After this, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sent his servants to Jerusalem while he was besieging Lachish with all his forces with him against Hezekiah, king of Judah, and against all Judah who were at Jerusalem, saying, now Lachish is south of Jerusalem, and I neglected to put that up on the wall tonight, but I could possibly, trying to think where a map would be. Well, we'll come to it. Let me see if I can do that. 2 Kings 18, I'm right there, so here, find that map. Way down here. Have a lot of slides to put together for this. But all the way at the end, I've got some more slides with maps in them, so we'll get down here and look at it. There. Lachish, I think I can find it. This is Jerusalem right here, and there the Assyrians are right here. So can you see that red dot? Pretty good. This is Lachish here in Jerusalem, so it's not very far away. They're pretty close. There it is. Okay, so this is what happens. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, sent his servants to Jerusalem while he was besieging Lachish with all his forces with him against Hezekiah, king of Judah, and against all Judah who were at Jerusalem, saying, and then what happened? Well, Mike skipped to 2 Kings. They jumped out of 2 Chronicles to 2 Kings. The reason I did that is because there's this tremendous story in 2 Kings 18, 19, and 20 that you don't want to miss out on. And in 2 Chronicles, it's really not very well recorded. So we're back over here in 2 Kings 18. If you're following along in your Bibles, you can go over there. Verse 9. Now in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, we're actually backing up just a little bit at this point. 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. At the end of 3 years, they captured it. 6th year of Hezekiah, which was in the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was captured. So it's going back and it's saying, look, don't forget, everybody up north has already been captured. And then it says that also that they've been carried away in exile in Assyria and the places that they put them. And this happened to them because they didn't obey God. This is what happened to the northern kingdom. Now in the 14th, now we're back to where we were just a moment ago. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. Then says, look it, I see you're beating the tar out of all my cities. Maybe I was kind of too fast in my thinking. Maybe I should slow down and do what you need me to do. So it says the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. Hezekiah gave him all the silver which was found in the house of the Lord and the treasuries of the king's house. All that at that time Hezekiah cut off the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts which Hezekiah, king of Judah, had overlaid, and gave it to the king of Assyria. So he went to a lot of trouble to get some kind of an offering in the hand of Sennacherib and get him out of here. Then the king of Assyria sent Tartan and Rabsaris and Rabshakeh from Lachish to King Hezekiah with a large army to Jerusalem. So from that little ways away that I pointed out where Lachish is, they marched on Jerusalem. So they went up and came to Jerusalem, it says. And when they went up, they came and stood by the conduit of the upper pool, which is on the highway of the fuller's field. Now we've had this before. This has happened. We have this conversation with Isaiah and Ahaz there. We have a conversation with Isaiah and Hezekiah there. So here these guys come up to this place where they can apparently do a lot of talking. When they called to the king, with Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder came out to them. So those guys come up close to Jerusalem, the city wall, and they say, hey, Hezekiah, come out here, we're going to talk to you. And Hezekiah, he doesn't go out. He sends out Eliakim and Shebna and Joah, and they come out and talk to him. When Rabshakeh, this is the Assyrian, had just come up from Lachish, he was a soldier with the Assyrians. Then Rabshakeh said to them, say now to Hezekiah, thus says the great king, the king of Assyria, what is this confidence that you have? You say, but they are only empty words, I have counsel and strength for the war. Now on whom do you rely that you have rebelled against me? Now behold, you rely on the staff of this crushed reed, even on Egypt, on which if a man leans, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt to all who rely on him. So in other words, he's saying, look you think that maybe you have some help coming to you from the south, down there in Egypt, beyond Lachish. That's not going to happen. They're not coming to help you. How come you think you can get away with keeping your doors shut against me? How come you think you can stand up to me? This is the kind of a speech that's being had. But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away and has said to Judah and to Jerusalem, you shall worship before this altar in Jerusalem? I just love how people try to confuse things. He actually knows a little bit of the history of Israel. He doesn't understand that the old law, the law that they've turned to and said God is our king again and we're going to do things his way. The old law actually said we got to take down the high places. And Rabshakeh is saying, hey, you tore all those places down. Do you think God's going to listen to you now? Well, actually, yes. Would have been the answer, should have been. Now, therefore, he says, come make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses, if you are able on your part to set riders on them. In other words, I want to make a gift to you, but you're going to have to sort of give up and obey me and do everything I say and let me in the city. How then can you repulse one official of the least of my master's servants and rely on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? Have I now come up without the Lord's approval against this place to destroy it? The Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. Do you think God told him that? See, this is an interesting thing. I like this question. This really gets to a very important question about how God does things. Because I will suggest to you that maybe God had, in fact, told him to come up. You need to go take care of business. worship other gods and they rejoice in it, and they have no intention of coming after me, Yahweh God or Jehovah God. So, hey, Mr. Assyria, go down there and take care of business for me. And so he does. But the way the Assyrian reads it is, well, you can't resist me because it was your God who sent me. Not realizing that God has every nation in his power to send it this far and not that far. So keep thinking about that. I think that's a very important part of the Old Testament. That God is in control of nations and rules them. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, and Shebna and Joah, those are the guys that were from Hezekiah's house. These guys had gone down to listen to him, said to Rabshakeh, speak now to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it, and do not speak with us in Judean in the hearing of the people who are on the wall. In other words, we'd rather you didn't say all this out in the open to all of our people. We don't want you talking to our people and discouraging them that way. But Rabshakeh said to them, has my master sent me only to your master, and to speak these words, and to you to speak these words, and not to the men who sit on the wall, doomed to eat their own dung and drink their own urine with you? Then Rabshakeh, he stood and cried with a loud voice in Judea, saying, hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus says the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he will not be able to deliver you from my hand. Nor let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us, and this city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the king of Assyria, make your peace with me, and come out to me, and eat each of his vine, and each of his fig tree, and drink each of the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, land of olive trees and honey, that you may live and not die. But do not listen to Hezekiah when he misleads you, saying the Lord will deliver us. Has any one of the gods, he gets pretty verbose, right? But I think he's making this promise, but it's not a very good promise, is it? Yeah, you can come out and you can go back home and you can tend your farms and your gardens and everything that you had been doing, but only until I come and get you and take you off to some foreign country. So he's telling the truth, because that is exactly what Assyrians did, and then later the Babylonians did also. Has any one of the gods of the nations delivered this land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Now he's applying this kind of logic. Are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Ivah? Have they delivered Samaria from my hand? In other words, I'm on a run here. I've beaten all these towns, and I'm going to beat you too. Their gods couldn't deliver them. Why do you think your God's going to deliver you? Who among all the gods of the lands have delivered their land from my hand, that the Lord should deliver Jerusalem from my hand? But the people, and I love this part, the people were silent and answered him not a word. For the king's command was, do not answer him. Everybody heard him. All of them were the subjects of his discouraging words. He had aimed them at their hearts. And rather than allowing their emotion and their discouragement and their fear to rule them, and well, what about this and that? They didn't raise their hand or their voice. They just kept quiet. And a lot of this is because of the way Hezekiah had managed things up to now. He was obviously letting God control. And so people of faith could have faith. Then Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, who was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, came to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him the words of Rabshakeh. So they took this back to King Hezekiah. And then it says, when King Hezekiah heard it, he tore his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth, and entered the house of the Lord. I like Hezekiah the more, I study him, because Hezekiah does not say, oh, we've got to have, So here's where Isaiah comes in. This is your tie-in to one of the greatest books in the Old Testament as far as prophecy is concerned, is Isaiah. They said to him, thus says Hezekiah, this day is a day of distress, rebuke, and rejection, for children have come to birth, and there is no strength to deliver. Perhaps the Lord your God will hear all the words of Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to reproach the living God and to rebuke the words that the Lord your God has heard. Therefore offer a prayer for the remnant that is left. So the servants of King Hezekiah came to Isaiah. That's what they did. They went to the prophet and said, please pray. Please pray for us. Isaiah said to them, thus you shall say to your master, thus says the Lord, do not be afraid because of the words that you have heard, with which the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed. Behold, I will put a spirit in him, so that he will hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will make him fall by the sword in his own land. Then Rabshakeh returned and found the king of Assyria fighting against Libnah, for he had heard that the king had left Lachish. When he heard them say concerning Tirhakah, king of Cush, behold, he has come out to fight against you, he sent messengers again to Hezekiah, saying, thus you shall say to Hezekiah, king of Judah, not let your God in whom you trust deceive you, saying, Jerusalem will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria. Behold, you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the lands, destroying them completely. So will you be spared? Did the gods of those nations which was destroyed deliver them? He goes in, keeps going. Where's the king of Hamath? And he's going. Hezekiah took the letter from the hand, so he sent this in a letter. And we'll start talking about that right there at verse 14, about the letter next Wednesday. But basically what Rabshakeh has had happen to him is he heard the rumor that Isaiah said he would hear, and now he's having to leave. He's worried that he's been outflanked, that his army is in trouble, and unless he gives up on Jerusalem right now, he might have so much trouble from other armies that they suffer a lot of defeat. And so he goes to take care of that. But as he goes, he sends this letter back to Hezekiah, basically says, look, buddy, this ain't over. I'm coming back. And that's where we'll leave it for tonight. Any questions